Welcome to our August AuthorConnect Chat. We love doing these each month, and we're very excited about today. I'm Carlin Hickson. I'm your host, and I work with authors, publishers, agents, speakers bureaus, publicists, marketers, sales reps, editors, and other incredible industry partners here at BookPal, where we believe books have the power to ignite continuous learning and growth. We invited our guest today, not only because we love her newest book, but we believe now more than ever, it is critically important to know, learn about, and practice attention management. We will be chatting about that, attention management, her latest book, and having a Q&A today. So please do feel free to join in. It's meant to be an interactive chat. We will also have some poll questions that we hope you will join in and participate in. And please do be sure to stay on until the end, as 3 lucky winners will be receiving a free signed copy of Attention Management. With us today is Maura Thomas, an expert in productivity and work-life balance, and a pioneer in the concept of attention management, which she calls the new path to productivity. You may have seen Maura's work before in Forbes, TEDx, Harvard Business Review, or one of her 3 books. She's also great at pretending to exercise, and she much prefers TV shows, movies, and books that have a happy ending. Hi, Maura. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Carlin. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited.
So getting started today, we're going to talk, I'm so glad you're all here to learn a little bit about attention management. And I call attention management the new path to productivity, as opposed to time management, which I consider to be the old path. And I'll tell you more about that as we go along. But I really want this to be relevant to you all today. So the first question I have for you, the first poll question we have, I want to learn a little bit about who is with us. So throw into the poll there, what is your job role? I'm interested to know if we've got mostly people who work for themselves, mostly people who work for other companies, what kind of level you're at in an organization. All right, so we have got quite the split here. Excellent. Okay, so I might ask you to remind me of those later, Carlin.
Sure.
So the next thing I want to share is that because I call attention management the new path to productivity, I want to talk about what is productivity, because people throw that word around. I think if you Google productivity, you get things like the national GDP and all that kind of stuff, which we are not talking about. There is a specific definition of the word productivity that guides my work, and that definition is achieving or producing a significant amount or result. Now, there is that sort of production, manufacturing piece in there, producing an amount. But if we take that out, what we're left with is what I think of as the personal productivity piece, achieving a significant result. So how productive you are is how much progress you are making on the things that are most significant to you. And the great thing is you get to choose what is significant. On some days, significance might mean my aunt is in the hospital and I have to call her. I have to call her before the end of the day, right? You have a million other things to do, but what's really on your mind is I have to call my aunt in the hospital. Other times, what's significant could be a work thing. I have to get this proposal out, right? And that significance changes with the time horizon. So you might have your significant result for this morning, for today, for this week, for this month, this year, but ultimately for this lifetime. And to me, attention management is about living a life of choice rather than a life of reaction and distraction. So instead of looking back and having regrets, if you ask yourself, you know, what did you do today? What did you get done today? What I find is that many people feel like they were busy all day, and yet they still didn't get those important things done. And that is because primarily of distraction. And so that's why I think that attention management is more relevant than time management, because how you manage your time only matters to the extent that you also devote your attention. If you manage your time and you say at 9 o'clock, I'm going to do that thing, which is pretty much what time management is about, right? At 9 o'clock, I'm going to make an appointment with myself. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to do that thing. But if 9 o'clock rolls around, and let's say that thing is a report, right? So you call up that report and you start to think about it, and then, oh, look, there's an email. Who's that from? Oh, okay, no, okay. Oh, text message, who's that? Let me just get that. Okay, no, where was I? The report. Oh, somebody just walked into my office. What do you need? Okay, now where was I? The report, right? And if the time that you managed goes by like that, without you really dedicating your attention, then that report probably won't be done at the end of the time. And so time management only matters if we also manage our attention. And that's one of the many reasons why I think time management, attention management is the more relevant path to achieving your significant results. So here's the choose your own adventure part. Next poll for us, Carlin. I want to know from you, what is your biggest obstacle to achieving those most significant results? Oh, and I'm sorry, my camera keeps going out of focus. It'll fix in a second. I can't get too close. I confuse the camera. All right, have we got those results, Carlin?
Yes.
All right. Too much to do and not enough time is tied with too many distractions. Not a big surprise. Okay, so let's take both of those. Too much to do and not enough time to do it. So to me, that's a great thing. Too much time, you can go ahead and close that. Great. So too much to do and not enough time to do it is a great thing. It means that you are ambitious and you are motivated and you are driven and you have all of these things that you want to get done in your life. And that's great, right? Being motivated and ambitious, you have a lot of stuff to do. What we really need to make sure, though, is that we are realistic. Most people, and I'm one of them, put too many things in our plans for the day, right? We overschedule ourselves. And we sort of just think that that's how it has to be. I just have too much to do. But every day, we don't get all that stuff done, and then we feel bad. And so the first thing I would suggest with this whole too much to do and not enough time to do it thing is to get realistic about what can really be accomplished in a day. And in order to get realistic, you have to consider you've got meetings, right? And I know many people, especially at the management level, who just schedule their whole day with meetings, back to back to back to back meetings, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours of meetings in a day. And if that's the case, then that leaves very little time to get your other work done, first of all. In order to solve that problem, I know we feel like we get invited to meetings, we have to attend meetings. But when you get invited to a meeting, make sure you know a couple of things. Number one, what's the goal of the meeting? Why are we being called into this meeting? And often you can know what the goal of the meeting is if you can end the sentence, at the end of this meeting, we will know, or we will do X, right? So at the end of this meeting, we will have a decision about the location of the conference. Or at the end of this meeting, we will know whether or not we're going to take on that new client. Or at the end of this meeting, we will move forward on this project plan that we just identified in the meeting, whatever. But the point is that if you know the outcome of the meeting, if it's not clear when you get invited, ask. because you can't make a decision when you look at your day. You can't prioritize, should I go to this meeting or should I do other things, if you really don't know what's the plan for the meeting. So what's the goal of the meeting, and then what's expected of you in the meeting? What's your role? Every meeting attendee has a role, whether you've been told what that role is or not. Maybe you're just being invited FYI. Maybe you're being invited because you're expected to be the decision maker. Maybe it's because you you know the history of the situation in a way that other people don't. You're the subject matter expert, right? But the point is, whatever your role is, you should know that going in. And if you don't know that when you're invited, again, ask. If you know those two things at least, there's a whole bunch more I could say about efficient meetings, but if you know those two things at least, then you can better prioritize, should I really go to this meeting, or can I just ask to be sent the outcomes when it's over? And that way, maybe you can reclaim a little bit more time in your day. So meetings are a big thing, and maybe it's not appropriate in your company culture to say no, but maybe that's a conversation that you can have with your boss. I know a lot of you are independent contributors. And so maybe that's a question for your boss. Like, is it cool for me if I realize that I'm really not required in a meeting? Is it cool for me to say no if I have other priorities, right? So managing meetings and blocking enough time that can't be booked. So another little trick that you can do is to block out time and just mark it private, so you're not showing as available. So that when people are sharing your calendar and look at your day, it's like, oh, she's got all these times free, but maybe you really, if all those times get taken, when are you gonna get your work done? So I block out those times and I call them proactive time for myself. I just put them on my calendar as proactive time. And that's because you can't be productive, right? Achieve your significant results until you can be proactive. And you can only be proactive when you're not being reactive, right? And oftentimes meetings are sort of reactive time. You're contributing to a goal and you're helping other people, and probably you have some investment in that goal, but making sure that that meeting is a good use of your time, and then blocking out times so that your days don't get overrun with meetings. A couple of good hints. Now, the second thing that we have to get realistic about is email. Many people treat email as this thing that I will squeeze in between my work, right? And so we check our email all the time, right? What's that? Many people check their email, every email as it comes in. What's that? What's that? What's that? Should I deal with that now? I'll get back to that later, which pretty much guarantees that you will be distracted all the time, right? And that will undermine your ability to manage your attention. So you have to have, when you're not working on email, close out your email so that you can get important work done. Now, I understand you can't do this for hours and hours at a time. You can't do it all day, but do you think you could do it for, like, I don't know, 20 minutes or 30 minutes every hour? Or maybe an hour 2 or 3 times a day? I mean, the frequency and the duration is completely up to you, because everybody's jobs are different, right? Some people's jobs are more reactive than other people's jobs. And so you will, if that describes you, if you're like in customer service or maybe in HR, maybe you can't close out your email as often as other people. But if you're in creative roles, especially like marketing, or if you're in detail-oriented roles like analysis, you get paid to think, right? You get paid for brain time. And so you can't marshal I call it brain power momentum. You can't get up that brain power momentum if you switch your attention every couple of minutes, every time a new email comes in. So closing out your email so that you can get other work done. But importantly, we have to treat email as work. It's not that thing that we squeeze in between our real work. It's actually work, right? For most of us, the emails we get are from clients, from colleagues, from our teammate members, from vendors, right? It's work. And so if email is real work, it takes real time in your day. And so that's another thing that you have to get realistic about. If you have 3 hours of meetings in a day, and if you get, most of the people I work with get somewhere around 100 real work emails a day. And so if that describes you, figure about 2 minutes for every email. Not that you can necessarily do everything that's asked of you in that email, but figure on average 2 minutes to like read the email and figure out what needs to be done. And maybe you can respond quickly, or maybe it's just FYI and you can file it. Maybe you can dispatch that email in those 2 minutes, and maybe you can't. But the point is, figure about 2 minutes on average for emails. So if you get 100 emails a day and it takes you about 2 minutes to deal with every email, that's 200 minutes of email a day. That's 3 hours and 20 minutes of email every day, right? And so if you don't think about that and get realistic about that and recognize that you have 3 hours and 20 minutes of work every day, and I understand most of us don't clean out our email inboxes every day. And I don't either. I do believe in getting my inbox empty, but usually that only happens to me about once a week. But here's the thing. If I have a day where I can't check emails, right? So I travel a lot for work. Sometimes I'm with a client all day long. If I know I can't deal with any emails today, then I'm going to have almost 7 hours of email tomorrow, because 3 hours and 20 minutes today and 3 hours and 20 minutes tomorrow. So I got to clear my schedule and plan for that. And sometimes there's 2 days where I can't. Maybe I can just check some emails real quick, make sure there's no emergencies. But other than that, I can't really deal with them. And so if there's 2 days in a row, now I got to leave like an entire day to just catch up on email. And if email is work and the email just keeps piling up, then you won't be on top of your work unless you know what's in your inbox. So this is why we end up feeling like we don't have enough hours in our day. The truth is, this is another reason why I'm not a big fan of thinking of our productivity in terms of time management, because it's not that we don't have enough time. You get the same 24 hours in a day that everybody gets. You get the same hours in a day that, Mother Teresa got and Steve Jobs got, and like everybody. You get the same 24 hours. It's not because we don't have enough time. Well, it is because we're busy and we're motivated and we try to cram too much in our day. But you can accomplish your most significant results if you manage your attention. The problem isn't really that we don't have enough time. The problem is that we have too many distractions. And so the antidote to too many distractions is not more time, it's better attention. It's not you can't solve a distraction problem with a time management solution. The antidote to distraction is attention. And that's why I think attention management is such a more important solution. So the problem we were solving is too much to do and not enough time to do it. So I gave you some tips to minimize meetings. You got to consider email as real work. And if you do that, then you can get more realistic about what am I really going to get done in a day? Because the truth is, you're going to do hundreds of things in a day, but probably most of them never even made it onto your to-do list, right? Most of them were things that just came up today. And so if you recognize that what's going to get done from your to-do list is going to probably be a small number, then for most people, it averages about 3. If you figure about 3 things in a day, now, I know that doesn't feel like enough. It doesn't feel like enough for me either. But if every time I put 5 or 7 or 10 or 12, then I just end up at the end of the day going, well, I didn't do those things again. No matter how hard I work, unless, right, the time just doesn't appear. You have to control your attention. You have to be proactive, work from what the important things on your list, so that you can achieve more of what's significant to you, because that's going to be with the things you were hired for and the things that matter to you, right? So your most important things, personally and professionally, you will, unless you create the space to make those things happen. It's not, a lot of us think like, well, when I have time someday, I'll do X. And that never happens. A lot of people go into work and they think, okay, I'm going to check my email and I'll check my social media feeds and I'll check my voicemail and I'll check my Slack channel and I'll check my Twitter. And then once I've done all that, then I can actually do some work. But that's how we get stuck in the cycle of reaction all day long. Because by the time I've talked to some small business owners, I know a lot of you are business owners, self-employed. I talk to a lot of small business owners like me who are like, okay, by the time I check my email, check all my social feeds, check all my like instant messages and Slack channels and all that kind of stuff, check my voicemail, deal with all that stuff. By the time I've done all of that once, well, now it's like 3 hours later and I got to start all the way at the beginning again. Now I've been out of my email for 3 hours. I got to check that again. And so then we end up in this cycle of reaction. So one of the fastest paths to achieving what's most significant to you, and I know for some people this will take some maneuvering, but one of the fastest paths to improving your productivity is to not check your messages first thing in the morning, or maybe just take a quick peek from your phone, you know, just to make sure that there are no emergencies. But when you sit at your desk, go to your task list first. Go to that thing. If you don't have a task list, whatever that thing is that is on that sticky note that you know that you've been needing to get done forever, do that first. And part of the reason that we avoid those things are sometimes they're too big or too vague, right? So it helps us. The hardest part of anything is getting started. And so if you can break down those things that look kind of vague, like if that sticky note says like, create the spreadsheet, right? Maybe you could say it a little bit more specifically, something like enter the numbers into the spreadsheet, or what's the first step to creating that spreadsheet? Well, maybe I have to review last year's numbers, or, right? Think about that thing. And if you've been avoiding it, it might be because it's either too vague, you don't really know what you need to do, or it's just too big. You can't do it in one sitting anyway. And so you see that thing on the sticky note and you're like, I don't have time for that, right? So breaking it down into a very small step can help give us that, it's called activation energy. It can help give us that activation energy. Well, once I take the first step, then I'm more likely to take the next step and the next step. So those are some tips for dealing with the too much to do and not enough time. The second thing I think that was tied with that, Carlin, am I right that it was too many distractions?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yes, way too many distractions. And the thing is, the distractions come from the distractions come from three places. So let's talk about those things. The distractions come from your environment, like other people. The distractions come from your technology. Something's always bigging, pinging, flashing, zinging at you. And the distractions come from your own brain. I want to do that, but I just remembered I need to call that person. Or I need to do that thing, but first I need to go do this thing, right? So the book is full of techniques for managing your distractions from those three sources. The secret to managing your attention, the first 3 steps, are that you have to control your environment, you have to control your technology, and then you can learn to control your own habits and behavior so that you aren't always distracting yourself. Because so let's talk about them one at a time. So when it comes to your environment, if you work in an office, if you're back to work, I know many of us are not. When you're in the office, there's always somebody dropping in on you, often, right? Hey, do you have a minute? Do you have a minute? Do you have a minute? I understand that we want to be helpful. And we often feel like we are at the mercy of this environment. It's loud here, it's noisy, everybody's always interrupting me. I just have to figure out how to get my work done despite that. But the truth is, you can actually exert more control over your environment than you might think. Maybe if you have an office with a door, I know not a lot of us do, but you can close it. And this counts for at work, at home as well. I know a lot of us are working at home right now. Maybe you're used to working at home. Maybe you're not used to working at home. But if you have other people in your house, the same principles apply, because managing distractions isn't really about where you work. It's more about how you work. And so if you think about how can I exert more control over my environment? So for example, if you have an office with the door, you can close it. And then, but you have to make sure that your colleagues, if you're at the office, or your family members, if you're at home, understand that the door means do not disturb. Now, if you have little kids who don't get this, we'll talk about that in a second. But for older kids and coworkers, if you want the door to mean, please don't interrupt me, then you have to let them know that that's the boundary. If the door is closed, maybe you could put maybe you could put a do not disturb sign on it, or maybe you could put a dry erase board or a chalkboard on it that says, please do not disturb until 2 o'clock, but write your name, and people can know to write their name, and then you can reach out to them when you're available if they're not also controlling their environment. If you close your door and you mean that to be, please don't interrupt me, right? But then somebody knocks on it and they walk through it anyway. And you go, okay, what do you need? Guess you didn't get the hint that the door meant please do not disturb, right? If they interrupt you with the door is closed and you say, fine, what do you need? Well, you've just taught them that the door doesn't actually mean anything, right? So instead, either put that sign on so they really don't come in, or if they still come in, say to them, I really can't, unless this is an emergency. Emergencies are always an exception. But unless this is an emergency, I really can't right now. Can you please come back in a little bit when the door is open? And after hearing this once or twice, people are going to get the hint, oh, door means don't interrupt. Now, if you don't have an office with the door, if you work in an open office like many of us do, you still can give your colleagues a signal that means please do not disturb. Maybe you can put a sign on the back of your chair, or maybe on your cubicle wall. Actually, you can get some lighthearted, fun, non-offensive do not disturb signs for free at maurathomas.com/do-not-disturb. They're fun. They won't insult anybody. There's a whole document. You can choose ones that you like. You can rotate through them. So putting that on your cubicle wall or on the back of your chair, or they have flags, like a cubicle flag if you work in a cubicle, or if you just work at a table with a bunch of other monitors, they have monitor flags. So if the flag is up, it means please don't interrupt me. If the flag is down, it means come on over, right? So even in a really loud, open floor plan, you can exert more control over your environment than you probably do, in a way that isn't offensive. I understand that you want to be helpful, but if you also have work that you have to get done, that you are responsible for, that you need to do in an undistracted way, you need to marshal that brain power momentum, then there has to be some time that you are unavailable to other people. So first step, too many distractions, to solving the too many distractions problem is that you have to exert more control over your environment. Oh, and if you have little kids, if you have little kids, glad you liked it, Anna, thank you. If you have little kids, here's a thing. If you are alone in your house with little kids who don't understand do not disturb, then honestly, you're going to have to show yourself some grace. You are not going to reach the same levels of productivity that you did when your kids were in daycare or in school and you are at the office or you're home alone, right? You just can't. If you are home alone with little kids who need care, you're going to have to find some windows, maybe when they're napping. Maybe you can put them in front of a movie and get some time. In that case, I would suggest that you divide your to-do list into two different components. What I would call low attention tasks and high attention tasks, right? So low attention tasks will be the things that you don't really need a whole bunch of brain power momentum to do. They could be like entering expenses into your financial software, entering receipts. It could be cleaning out those old emails in your inbox. It could be, browsing for flights if you're traveling again, right? Those things that if you're interrupted, it's not a huge deal. you can do those things when the kids are like, hey mom, hey dad, hey mom, hey mom, hey mom, hey dad, hey dad, hey dad, right? Interrupting you all the time. Maybe you can squeeze in some of that work. The high attention stuff is the stuff that you need the brain power momentum for. And those are the things that you do when the kids are napping, when the kids maybe are outside in the backyard playing. You get 20 minutes, 30 minutes here or there. Managing your attention with little kids is really hard. So you also might talk to your boss about your outcomes, right? I'm home with kids, right? You explain to your boss, I'm home with kids. They're not in school. I have to supervise their homeschooling here pretty soon. But I want to talk about what I will accomplish this week or in this 2-week period. So then it's less about how many hours you work, but it's more a dialogue about this is what I think is realistic that I can get done. It's more outcome-based than hours-based. And that might be a way to kind of set everybody's expectations if you're home alone. If there's another parent or another caregiver in the house with you, then what I would suggest is that you switch off with little kids. One person is taking care of the kids fully, right? Maybe doing some of their low attention tasks if the kids aren't too demanding, but you get to do your high attention stuff for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever you guys decide, and then you switch. So those are some ways to control your environment, whether you're in the office or whether you're at home. Second problem we have is our technology. The thing is, our technology can only distract us if we allow it to. We have forgotten, I feel, as a society, that our technology exists for our convenience, right? Nobody went into Best Buy or the Apple Store or AT&T or wherever you bought your phone and said, here's my money, here's my $1,000 so everyone can interrupt me all the time. Right? That wasn't our intention, and yet that's typically how we behave. And so you have to control your environment so that you can get important work done, so that you can build up that brain power momentum. You have to put your Slack or Teams or whatever team collaboration tool that you use into do not disturb mode. You have to close out your email. You have to put your phone on silent, face down, out of your sight is even better, because studies show that just having our phone in our presence lowers our cognitive capacity. In other words, it makes us dumber. So when you're trying to build up that cognitive capacity, to that brain power momentum to get those important tasks done, put your phone out of sight. Again, I understand you can't do this for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours at a time, but can you do it for like 20 or 30 minutes at a time, or sometimes maybe even an hour, and then check in? If your organization uses email in the case of urgent and time-sensitive situations, then I would suggest that you try to be a champion for changing that. Email was never intended to be synchronous communication, real-time communication. We can't ever answer every email as it comes in all the time. It's simply not possible. And so you have to define the language with your team that says, look, if it's an emergency, do X. And that's like the emergency channel, right? If it's an emergency, call me twice. Because you can set up the do not disturb on your phone to say, if it's the same number twice, let it through, right? So figure out your, like, this is really an emergency channel. And then feel comfortable shutting all the stuff down so that you can build up that brain power momentum and do those really high attention tasks that are really the things that are going to make you feel more satisfied at the end of the day, more accomplished at the end of the day. The more of those things you do in a day, the more satisfied you will feel. You won't have that feeling of, oh my gosh, I was busy all day, but I got nothing done. The world is never going to leave you alone. Your technology is never going to leave you alone. You have to control your technology, otherwise it will control you. And here's the thing. Our technology is habit forming. And it was created to be habit forming on purpose. There's a place at Stanford called the Influence Lab, where technology developers go to teach, to learn how to make habit forming technology. And so these distractions start to create in us, very much on purpose, a habit of distraction. People ask me a lot, are we addicted to our devices? I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not qualified to talk about addiction, but what I can tell you is that our devices have habituated us to distraction. They have created in us a habit of distraction. When you get distracted every few minutes, you get used to getting distracted every few minutes. And so then even in the absence of distraction, after a few minutes, you're like, wait, I better check my email or my phone, right? So you interrupt yourself, right? Which is the third step to attention management. Once you learn to control your environment and exert some control over your technology, then you can start resetting this habit of distraction, which is really undermining you, right? It undermines your attention span, but it also, I bet you'll find, undermines your patience. If you ask yourself, are you less patient than you used to be? And if the answer is yes, my guess is that it's because of this, you're so used to receiving this distraction every few minutes that you get impatient when it doesn't happen. And so then those things that are really satisfying and really require that brain power momentum, not only do we not have the ability to do them, but we don't even want to do them anymore because we're too impatient. Oh, it's going to take too long, it's too hard, it's too big. I don't have time for that. And yet, those are the things that will make us feel more satisfied at the end of the day. Those are the things that will help us enjoy our jobs. Those are the things that we are good at, that allow our highest and best selves to shine, that we will be proud of, that we will feel accomplishment at the end of the day. But you can only do that when you can control your attention through controlling your environment and controlling your technology, so that then you can better control your habits. So those are a couple of different ways that we solve those two problems of too much to do, not enough time to do it, and too many distractions to getting things done. And I know that we're getting close to the end. Carlin, do you want to take some questions from the chat?
Absolutely. We did get a couple comments and questions. I'll start with the comment. Heidi said, "This book is excellent. It helped me make positive changes and I saw results. Now that I've been home for a few months, I need to get back into practicing what I started in the office." That's great to hear. I agree. I think your book is so actionable with so many examples of how to really get this done and start managing your attention. And you just went over a few of those tips, which kind of relate to the question. Anna Lucia said, "I have been doing home office for a couple of months now, and I have a hard time focusing on the tasks that I don't like. Even if I schedule time for myself in my calendar, I haven't been able to sit down and do what I'm meant to do. I always find a better distraction, work-related or home-related or WhatsApp-related. Have you got any advice so I can get the boring stuff done?"
Absolutely. It's a great question, Anna Lucia. Thanks for asking it. And thanks for the awesome feedback, Heidi. I'm so glad that you're finding the book useful. So when it comes to those things that we really don't want to do but have to do, a couple of different things. If you go to my blog, maurathomas.com/blog, and search for procrastination, I have a great post of 6 ways to overcome procrastination, which I think is what you're talking about, Anna Lucia. And but one of the ways is I talked about getting started, and the hardest part of anything is getting started. If you can break down that thing into a tiny little step, right? The smaller the step you can break it down into, the easier it will be to get started. And there's this concept of activation energy, and it comes from physics, but it basically says an object in motion is more likely to stay in motion, and an object at rest is more likely to stay at rest. And it's true for people too. The hardest part of anything is getting started. So the easier you can make it for yourself to get started, the more likely you will be to keep going. Keep going, keep going. And even if you don't keep going, taking that first step is better than taking no steps at all, right? So when you have that thing that you really don't want to do, break it down into a small step and then keep going. Now, another thing that you can do is offer yourself some rewards, right? Like if you're really dying to check in on WhatsApp or Instagram, make it a reward. As soon as I do this step or these 2 really important things that I have to get done, then I can take a walk around the block and scroll Instagram for 20 minutes or whatever, right? Or I can take that coffee break. It doesn't have to be a big, huge reward. It can be a little small reward. But if you tie those things that you have to do into those things that you want to do, then it makes it more likely that you will get those things done. Those are a couple of ways. And like I said, in that blog post, there's, I think it's 6 ways to overcome procrastination, but those are a couple.
I love those. I put the link in the chat so people can find that as well, and search procrastination. Sarah asked, being realistic has been a challenge for me. Any tips to help me become better?
Yeah, it's a challenge for all of us, right? Because we're driven and we're motivated and we want to get all this stuff done. Thanks, Anna Lucia. So we try to cram all this stuff into our day, but what happens is we just don't get that stuff done, and then we feel bad. And then we have to sort of reschedule those things. Didn't do that. And that's another reason that I don't like the idea of time management, because time management says, take all that stuff that you have to do and plug it into an opening on your calendar. But the first person you're going to break an appointment with is yourself, right? And so what I find is that if you take those items on your to-do list and you just stick them into your calendar, I'll do this at 2 o'clock, I'll do this at 3 o'clock, I'll do this tomorrow at 10, and then you break those appointments with yourself. Now you just end up rearranging your calendar. Oh, I didn't do that at 10, so now I'll do it at 4, right? So you just end up breaking those appointments with yourself and then having to reschedule everything. So I find that people who are very focused on time management end up spending more time rearranging their calendar than they actually do getting things done. So thinking about managing your attention, but back to the question about being realistic, tips for being realistic. The great thing about my whole workflow management system that I call the empowered productivity system is that the more you do it, the better it feels. So if you can try to be more realistic in your day and say 3 things. If I go to my meetings and I stay on top of my email and I just do these 3 things on my list, that's going to be a good day. And you have that day, and at the end, you got that stuff done, and you aren't sort of beating yourself up about all the other stuff that you didn't get done, which you never really had time to do anyway. So you're just being really hard on yourself. The more you get realistic, the better you'll feel at the end of the day, and the more you'll want to do it again tomorrow. So again, just like anything else, the hardest part is getting started. But once you get started, you're more likely to keep going. So I hope that helps.
So true. I had a question because we do have some teachers and librarians on today. How can people pivot, educators specifically, pivot to and practice attention management as they go into the fall with online learning?
Yeah. I am the daughter of a teacher, and so I can tell you that I totally understand how demanding it is, and I stand in front of adults, not kids, but classroom management is really important, and it takes all of your attention. And I know that teachers are having real challenges with this whole Zoom environment and Google Classroom and this virtual stuff. So the best advice I can give you is to recognize that really all of us can only do one thing at a time well. And really, the human brain can only hold one conscious thought. I know that we like to think that we can multitask. And it's true that you can maybe, walk and chew gum, right? Like your body can do 2 things at once, but your brain can only do one. And so when you're doing brain activities like teaching and reading and speaking and participating in a webinar, right, you'll get much more out of it if you do only that. It might seem like it's not efficient. It might seem like in this 2-minute lull in my classroom, I can actually knock off an email. But that means you'll be switching your attention, which is really what multitasking means. Our brain can only do one thing. And so when we think that we're multitasking, we're actually task switching back and forth from this to this to this to this. And every time we task switch, we lose brain power. It actually makes us dumber. So show yourself the mercy, be kind to yourself, recognize that when you're doing online learning, do only that. And be realistic about how much else you can get done in your day when that's going to take up so much of your, not only your time, but your attention.
Absolutely. A couple final comments from some folks. Great insights and a new viewpoint to productivity and how we can look at the attention. Thank you, Maura. That's from Madden MS. And Francisco said, it's important to talk with your boss or colleagues to understand the new ways of working. This is a new culture in some companies. Very,
Yes.
very true.
Absolutely, Francisco. That's why I was talking about outcome-based. If you can go to your manager and talk about what are the outcomes that I'm going to accomplish this week or in these 2 weeks, and that way you might feel a little bit less pressure. A lot of times we will be very responsive to prove that we're working, right? Obviously, I'm sitting at my computer because I got your email as soon as you sent it, right? But really what that just means, what you're proving is that you're very distracted. And you won't do your best work when you're very distracted. So if you can show that you're working with the outcomes that you produce, studies show that when we do only one thing at a time and we minimize the switching and the multitasking, all the things we are doing take less time and get better. The quality goes up. So the truth is you will get more done better if you only do one thing at a time. So it's a great point from Francesca to talk to your boss about outcomes instead of trying to just show by how responsive you are that you're actually working.
So true. Yeah, working towards those larger initiatives. Gary also said, great presentation. Thank you so much. I will get a copy of your book. Which it is an amazing book, which leads us into, we have 3 winners today who are going to get a signed copy of Attention Management. Congratulations to Paige Selking, Sarah Raymond, and Brian Schaefer.
Awesome. And I have one gift for you all also before you leave. If you go to empoweredproductivitytraining.com, I have an online program in attention management. The book is a great companion, but attention management is one piece of my empowered productivity system. And if you decide that it's useful to you, you can see a video of what it's like. There's a couple of videos, empoweredproductivitytraining.com. If you decide that it would be useful to you, you can put in the code BookPal when you check out to save 20%.
That's so generous. Thank you. I just put that in the chat.
Awesome. Well, feel free to reach out via my website if there's anything else I can do to help you. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate you all being on and participating. I hope you found it useful.
Yes, thank you everyone for being here. We will see you next month, September 2nd, with Scott Miller, and we are wishing you all continued safety, health, learning, growth, and connection. Thank you, Maura.
Thanks, Carlin.
Bye-bye.